Since the FOMC meeting is tomorrow, I wanted to just do a quick video to talk about what exactly we would need to see in order to kind of restore our hopes in a potential 2025 alt season. Obviously, there's a lot of various crazy things going on within the crypto market. And so I wanted to focus on kind of the core things that we need to see, particularly out of something like an FOMC meeting, for us to actually essentially get back on track for kind of what we've been a little bit derailed on for crypto, at least so far in 2025. So we're going to be going through that. I want to also just kind of do a quick state of the market, see where we're at. We can see a lot of really interesting things happening with Bitcoin price specifically, also various kind of economic indicators within the market. And I think we're also seeing some things going on that are really quite interesting. I think there's just a lot of people looking for literally anything that they can grasp onto at this point. So we are also going to be taking a look at that as well. So moving on though, I want to take just a quick look at crypto bubbles to start. We can see on the day, Cake obviously up quite a decent bit, which is pretty impressive. Pi down quite a decent bit. Also, I think what we're starting to see here is some of that initial euphoria from the initial kind of Pi launch. A lot of their initial success, a lot of that type of stuff is just kind of is starting to kind of ebb away at this point. And so, we are starting to see kind of some sustained sell-offs. This is generally what happens when we see very hyped projects like this. And so if you are looking to be getting into Pi, I think this is probably not the time, but again, who knows for sure? We can never really call an exact bottom with complete certainty, but at least in my mind, really, and kind of this goes for the whole crypto space that I'm looking at right now. The only thing I'm really looking into super seriously is some of my highest conviction plays, and then obviously Bitcoin. Bitcoin, in my opinion, is probably going to always be a relatively decent buy. There are going to be small bits and pieces or small periods where potentially maybe not the best time, but at least kind of generally by and large, I do think that Bitcoin is going to consistently be a very strong performer that I will always be comfortable putting money into when I am looking to DCA. Now, moving along, we can see actually a green week, which is very surprising because at least for the past little while, it's been basically nothing but red. We are actually seeing a couple pretty decent moves up here. Cake, obviously one of them. Atom, Caspa, ICP's one. Obviously we talk about this fairly lengthy on the channel, and it's actually moving up. So I'm very happy to see that. We're also seeing several others around here doing quite well. Helium, I've been a long time fan of them. Their coin's been starting to move a little bit, which is good. But if we do look at the month, things still really rough. So it's just kind of what it is. Obviously we're seeing a lot of macro economic indicators and things like that are kind of really making people quite nervous. So we're going to obviously be going a little bit more into detail. One of those coming up here very soon, so we'll be talking about that. But at least so far, obviously not been a good month in crypto at all. If we do look at the market overview, we can see kind of exactly this showing up here. We can see that we are sitting in fear currently. We've seen the open interest in Bitcoin specifically come down quite a substantial amount. We can see open interest below 50 billion, where we did peak out just shy of actually 70 billion. So a decent chunk of money has kind of left the scene so far here in crypto. And then we also could see the RSI heat map. The market has actually moved up into neutral. So that I would say is a pretty good thing to see overall. We do still have a decent chunk of coins here in the weak category, but the market average is actually sitting in neutral, which is a good thing. The market is recovering a little bit. We've seen, I think, probably most of the fear, at least in the short term, probably gone. But again, how long this lasts, all this type of stuff, we don't know for sure. If we do look at the Bitcoin exchange liquidation map though, we can see pretty even spread both on the 1 and 7 day, and also some decent chunks of money coming back in here as well. So pretty even. I don't know that we've got a ton of indication or direction on where we could potentially see price going. Obviously to the upside here on the 7 day, very large walls kind of sitting at 85,000 and below. And then if we look at the downside, it's a little bit less concentrated. We see that the split here kind of goes all the way down to 78K. There's not as big of walls as what we see kind of here to the upside. So obviously that's kind of what we'll be keeping an eye on and just kind of monitoring. This is kind of a good general snapshot of the market. I think what we can see right now, it's a very fear-based market. It's a fairly weak market, but it's probably a weak market getting stronger, not a weak market getting weaker, at least at this point in time. Again, we don't know for sure. If we do take just a quick look at Bitcoin though, we can see exactly that. Let's just pull this up into full screen. We can see obviously we did drop kind of below this level where we were consolidating. It now appears that we might be consolidating in this level. Very, very hard to say for sure. If we do look, we could kind of see there's a little bit of a descending trend line going roughly in this range. Again, not perfect, but we are kind of seeing that descending trend line. So if we do kind of break across this would potentially indicate a trend reversal. And then we are also starting to see kind of a little bit of a very much smaller ascending trend line going on here. But again, this is obviously far smaller in comparison to something like this. This has just been happening for a couple of days, where this has been happening for multiple weeks at this point. So I'm not sure that I would be looking to this for too much direction, but at least for right now, we can kind of see that is what we're looking at. Obviously, of course, we're looking to see a break out of this for a trend change. If we do look kind of at the very short term over the past couple of days, we can see prices consolidating. It is kind of consolidating up at this kind of higher like 82 to like 85 type of range. If we continue to see something like this happen, like we did see happen back in here, we could see another squeeze happen. And again, when we see the Bollinger Band squeeze, this is usually meaning that a point of volatility is coming, like we saw exactly happen right here. Again, we don't actually know for sure which direction the volatility is going to go, but we do know that volatility is coming. Same type of thing here. We can see Bollinger Band squeeze, particularly with this being a daily candles. When things squeeze, that it's getting very, very concentrated. And so same type of thing here. We saw a little bit of a squeeze, and then obviously that really, really strong run to the upside here. We have not seen this squeeze yet, just because we obviously did see, some pretty huge amounts of volatility over the past several weeks, but over the past probably 10 days, I would say, maybe since kind of like the 10th of March. So maybe about the past week, we have started to see price consolidate a little bit. Again, still not what we are seeing kind of in this range here. So there is kind of a lot that remains to be seen here. And then, of course, as we did check on the overall kind of crypto market indicator, we can see Bitcoin looking quite similar, a little bit below neutral here as far as RSI strength. We had come into oversold here. Again, generally when we see Bitcoin go oversold, usually a pretty decent time to pick up some Bitcoin. But again, obviously that time has passed. However, price is still somewhat similar. So something to think about there. Obviously, none of this is investment advice. None of this is me telling you what to buy or what to sell. I don't know your financial situation. You obviously need to make your own decisions. And as I have kind of talked about more and more recently, so much of your investment convictions and your investment strategy is 100% solely based on your own convictions and your own research. The only way for you to get conviction is to understand the project. The only way for you to understand the project is for you to do your own research. So always just something to think about. And then also I will show you that we do have that link to BTCC in the description below. If you are looking to trade on BTCC, it's a very, very great place to trade. 10% bonus on first time deposits, which is a really, really good deposit bonus. A lot of places will give you, $20, $50, whatever. But this is a 10% bonus on first time deposits, which is a massive deposit bonus, which is really, really good if that is something that you are interested in. And then also they do have extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user. So this is something you can kind of unlock as you're trading within the software, all that type of good stuff. And then no VPN or KYC necessary. So again, another really great thing there as well, if that is something that you are looking for. Okay, so now moving on, like I said, in the description below, all that type of good stuff. But moving on, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the FOMC meeting. That obviously is something that many people are talking about. I want to kind of break that down a little bit further and discuss at length what we could potentially be seeing, what's most likely to be seen tomorrow, and then what we could say are like probably best case scenarios or best case outcomes for crypto holders and crypto fans, all that type of good stuff. So we're going to actually move on, and we could see on Wednesday, March 19th, at 2 p.m. Eastern time. This is when the FOMC meeting happens. It's a 2-day meeting. Then they have their press conference. This press conference is kind of like the culmination of the meeting. They announce kind of what they're planning on doing, all that type of stuff. We can see here the CME group does have kind of like some like, I guess, market rate or like interest rates probabilities of what they're expecting to see. We can see the current rate is 425 to 450. And again, this is basis points. So 4.25 to 4.5% is what it's sitting at currently. And then if we look here, we can see it's a 99% chance that they hold rates steady. There is a 1% chance that they potentially do a 1% or they 25 basis point rate cut, which would bring the rate down to 4 to 4.25%. but again, exceedingly low chance of this happening. I think overall that this is something that probably makes a lot of sense. If I wasn't tracking this back a couple of weeks ago, but if I had to guess, it was very, very likely that there was almost 100% chance of rates just staying steady until we did see that kind of less than ideal inflation report. Again, less than ideal actually being kind of like a good thing, I guess you could say, because it came in lower than expected. So less than ideal meaning like from like an inflationary perspective, but ideal if you're a crypto holder, right? And so I would imagine that since inflation numbers came in lower than what was expected, this maybe kind of pushed that 1% possibility into play. Again, I think it is exceedingly unlikely that we do see a rate cut happening here in a couple of days, but if it did happen, I think that would probably be a pretty good thing for the crypto market. There is kind of that counter argument at which it could be like actually a little bit worrying. Again, short term, this is all short term volatility in my opinion, but it could be a little bit concerning because essentially the Fed would be kind of enforcing or agreeing with the fact that the market may actually be in a worse position than what people are expecting, which could be leading to kind of more recessionary signs, recessionary indicators, a lot of that type of stuff. So we will have to see kind of what the central bank does. Obviously, I think it's almost certain that we see rates stay the same, and then potentially we start to see rates getting cut a little bit later in the year. Starting out 2025, it was kind of the expectation that we were going to see maybe 0 to 1 rate cuts. It's looking right now that people are thinking maybe 2 to 3 is kind of the general sense of what I'm seeing. But we don't know for sure. I mean, a lot of this type of stuff changes with the weather. And also we've seen in the past that the Fed will say one thing and do the other because they can see the impact that their words have on the market. So even if they're maybe fully intending on cutting 4 times in a year, they may only say they're going to cut 1 because it will keep longer term interest rates higher for longer. And again, this is just because the market is trying to price in what they think the Fed is going to do. How do you know what the Fed is thinking about doing? Well, you just listen to what they say, right? And so, but sometimes, they do use that as a tool because they'll say one thing and then do the other. Because if they said the thing that they were going to do, obviously people are going to be trying to factor that in ahead of time. Because again, markets are efficient and they try to kind of be at the bleeding edge of what they expect to be happening. So that's kind of what we're seeing. If we do go back into the FOMC kind of rate cut probabilities, we can see for the May meeting, there's about an 80% chance that we see, again, rates held the same, about a 20% chance that we do see 1 rate cut or 0.25% rate cut. Then there's a 0.2% chance that we see an actually 0.5% rate cut. Again, I think this would be exceedingly unlikely. I think probably the thing that makes the most sense kind of in the shorter term, and again, probably the thing that would probably make the most sense and be the most bullish for crypto is we kind of see economic data continue to trend because again, we only saw one data point that inflation was coming in lower than expected. I think for the Fed to actually make a decision, they're going to need to see multiple kind of like they're going to need to see a trend, right? Not just like a rogue dot somewhere on a graph. And so I think that is why May is looking like a potentially good time to see a rate cut is because right now they just don't have enough data. And so they need to actually have the data for us to go in and actually, or for them to go in and actually feel comfortable with a rate cut. So that's kind of what my expectation is that we'll see potentially a rate cut in May if that data continues to trend down. Again, inflation going lower is good because that means that hopefully inflation has been stopped and we can actually start to lower interest rates. Lowering interest rates increases liquidity in the market because essentially you can't just park your money in a Fed, like essentially like a government bond security, paying you 4.5%, 5%, whatever it is per year. Obviously, if you can get a risk-free return of 5% a year or 4% a year, you're going to feel pretty happy with that, especially since there's a lot of, like financial, like asset management, things like that. They go off of like 4% returns being risk-free. When things are kind of at that level or above, usually people are going to be a little bit more risk off just because it's easier to get. It's like you essentially have to do nothing and make 4 to 5% a year. Not too bad, right? Now, if you're, essentially doing nothing and only making 0.5%, 1%, 2%, something like that, it's a little bit less attractive, and now people are actually it's now more worth the work to go out and try and find interesting assets and alternatives that can kind of yield a decent return. And so because of that, that's when usually people become a little bit more risk on. Again, there's kind of a lot of different things that make people risk on or risk off. Risk-free rates are one of them. Obviously, general market sentiment, things like that, that is something else. But people are always kind of trying to keep a lot of these things and kind of keep a mental map. Again, that nobody really has for sure, but they're trying to keep them in line and kind of understand what makes the most sense at that point in time. And so I think right now, probably the no rate cut in March, potentially rate cut in May seems to make the most sense. And I do think that would track fine for crypto coming into the end of 2025. As I've said before, I really don't think that we'll see anything too special out of crypto, next month, 2 months from now, things like that, just because there's still so much macroeconomic uncertainty. This macroeconomic uncertainty, though, will kind of sort itself out just through time, right? The longer it goes without the world falling apart and collapsing, that in a sense is kind of security in itself, right? And so I think as a lot of these changes are being made, as a lot of these, potential adverse outcomes don't actually happen, people start to get a little bit more confident and they start to feel comfortable that the plan is actually working. And of course, obviously not seeing the Fed do anything too crazy, that's going to build confidence as well. Getting some more kind of level of security and certainty that, the government, the Fed, everybody else, they kind of know what's going on. They've got their hands on the wheels, all that type of stuff. That's what kind of most of the market is going to be looking for. And honestly, one thing I want to kind of show as a quick aside here is that we need to always be careful with what's going on just within the crypto Twitter space and influencers and all this type of stuff. Obviously, I'm talking to you from a YouTube channel, so this might be a little bit hypocritical, and I do recognize that. But I do see this stuff a lot, and this is the type of thing that I do think kind of makes me a little bit nervous. Here, what we could see, obviously, we've got a post here. Trump will sign multiple executive orders today at 3:30 p.m. EST. Something about Bitcoin would pump the market. Yeah, sure, I guess, right? But who's actually trading on this type? This just makes no sense to me. We can also see here, there's a whale that's increased. This was kind of the big news a couple days ago. There was a whale who placed a short trade on Hyperliquid, and it kind of freaked everybody out. I think what a lot of people don't understand is that there are whales placing these trades constantly on centralized exchanges. You just can't see it because they're centralized and they kind of hide it all, and you just don't have that visibility. So what we can see here, obviously, that this whale is and does still have this position open. That position has actually been increased, but there's just so much stuff going on. This is neutral to maybe bullish. I don't know. This is one of those things where I think if something happens on a Tuesday and it's above 70 degrees, then it would be a good thing, right? It's well, yeah, whatever. I don't know that this is particularly helpful. But then, here we've got something that is potentially indicating bearish. We have this that is potentially indicating bullish. We have this that's this is just about Ondo, right? We got this is inflow for Bitcoin. We've got this, which is outflow for Ethereum. Good for Bitcoin. So this is indicating bullish. Again, there's just so many people with so many different thoughts, all of them kind of loosely based around random things. Obviously, we have the FOMC meeting. This is probably going to be a very popular news for people to be talking about. This is all types of things where it's if people are taking too strong of a stance one way or the other, it can maybe potentially cloud your judgment a little bit, which is why I try very, very hard to be as objective as possible. Of course, I do have my own biases and things like that, which of course you need to be watching out for and trying to understand, how I might have come to a certain conclusion. But I think right now there's not really much of a bullish or bearish conclusion to have. I think it's more of just what would potentially be the best thing for crypto, and then some other outcomes that we could potentially see. Neither are necessarily good or bad. They're just different things. I'm ultimately long-term very, very bullish in crypto. I don't care if they cut zero rates. I don't care if they raise rates. I don't care if they cut 0.5%. None of that matters because, yes, of course, price will move short-term tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever it is. Price might move short-term, but long-term, if you understand what you hold and if you have truly done your research, you understand crypto, you know why you're here, you know why you hold it, it doesn't really matter, right? What we're seeing from a fundamental perspective is bullish. And I think that's why we've seen price actually kind of have some, particularly on Bitcoin, we've seen it hold up in otherwise a pretty rough market in terms of just fear from macroeconomic things and tariffs and taxes and all this type of stuff. But what we've seen is the market's held up because there's a lot of fundamentally bullish things going on for crypto specifically. And once a lot of these macro things get sorted, that's why I do think we could potentially see crypto completely rocket, just because of all of the essentially macroeconomic weights that are being held on it right now. Again, we don't know for sure. Obviously, maybe some of these things can change with time, but at least for right now, things fundamentally are looking pretty strong, at least stronger than they ever have for crypto. And I think that's the important thing to kind of realize here is, if you're not bullish on crypto now, why were you bullish on crypto before? I guess would be the question here. So anyway, those are just some of my thoughts, kind of what I think is going on within the market, all that type of good stuff. If you have any comments, questions, anything like that, just drop them in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be a good way to do so. And then also a like and a subscribe, all that stuff really, really does help me get pushed further into the YouTube algorithm, all that type of good stuff. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.